This one move changed everything we thought we knew about Glimmora in competitive play. And yes, we are talking about Meteor Beam, its return to the game, and how that made Glimmora a threat in the VGC metagame once again. To start things off, we are going to look quickly at how Glimmora was run up in previous regulations before it got access to Meteor Beam. That way we can fully understand its transition into the Meteor Beam era and talk about why Meteor Beam is absolutely the tool it needed to succeed once again. So really quickly here, back when Glimmora was first released into Regulation A's, the Regulation B's, you would a lot of the times see Glimmora rocking that Assault Vest, sitting on the field, abusing its new ability in Scarlet and Violet, Toxic Debris. And for those of you that are unaware of what Toxic Debris does, if Glimmora is hit by physical attacks, toxic spikes would go up on the opposing side of the field. And now, entry hazards weren't something we saw a lot being used in VGC or in doubles. Those were more of something you'd see normally in singles. So having Toxic Debris and being able to capitalize off of that in doubles, especially beside the likes of something like a Dondozo that was really hard to take off the field and really hard to remove, you start adding Toxic Debris and say, okay, if you hit me, you're going to start getting poisoned. My Dondozo in the back is going to stall out that game. Okay, you don't want to hit me. That's fine. I'm going to capitalize on Mortal Spin. I'm going to poison you anyways, and my Dondozo in the back is going to seal out the game. Now, this strategy slowly went downhill as we started having more and more Dondozo answers released into the game, right? We saw more heavy threats being answered into Dondozo, right? We saw Iron Bundle come around. Its freeze dry was a huge problem into Dondozo, right? Then we see Urshifu, which is now just critting through the Dondozo boost. Obviously not like perfectly answering it, but definitely hindering off the Dondozo. Right? So this style of Glimmora kind of became not so great. Okay, you got the poison up, but it didn't have time to really slowly stall out the game because the Dondozo and the whole strategy of I'm going to just stall you out didn't really work anymore because you just took out the Dondozo way too fast before the Dondozo could effectively stall out your team. Yes, the chip damage you're getting from Dondozo was still there, but it wasn't quite as much as you really had at the beginning once this Glimmora first became a thing. Right? Now, why does Meteor Beam save Glimmora, in my opinion? We've seen Glimmora have very strong success in Regulation F already. It got second at the Portland Regional Championships a few weeks ago, once again on a Dondozo team. I'm not saying you can't put this thing beside Dondozo because it is still really strong beside Dondozo. However, I'm saying it no longer needs to be this passive. And I think that is where Glimmora shines with Meteor Beam. Really quickly, for those that do not know what Meteor Beam does, it raises the user's special attack stat by 1 and then attacks on the second turn. So basically, it is a charge. It's like a solar beam or an electro shot if you're more familiar with the Archaludon. It's basically a 120 power move. You charge up on the first turn, get the special attack, and then you launch it off on the second turn, and you do big damage. Now, normally, charging this attack becomes the problem. However, we have this item called Power Herb, and Power Herb allows these 2-turn moves to be utilized in one turn. Only once, of course, once per battle, I should say, but that is enough to make Glimmora a threat. If you look at the common teams right now in the game, right, let's take Shenpao Entei, for example, right? That is a very strong course. Sometimes, more often than not, that's paired with a Dragonite. Right there, that is 3 rock weaknesses to this Glimmora. Glimmora one-shots all 3 of them. Done. Unless they tear out of it, Glimmora is taking the KO. Simple, right? You also look at maybe the Tornadus. It's fast too. It also doesn't want to be in front of a Glimmora, right? You also have the ability to now say, I'm going to be at +1 special attack. Don't forget you are a poison type still. Have Sludge Bomb, are actually resisting the Fluttermane's Moonblast. If they want to go Terra Fairy as well, you probably one-shot them with a Sludge Bomb, especially after you get a Meteor Beam special attack boost, right? This allows Glimmora to be on the field. Whoops, I meant to say Spiky Shield, right? You get to run Spiky Shield now as well, which we've seen on Ogerpon is absolutely incredible. You get to break Focus Sashes with Spiky Shield, right? And then you get to put a coverage move here, whether you want to keep Mortal Spin as well, whether you want to switch to Energy Ball, Earth Power. There is room for a coverage move here. I recommend offense in this slot, especially if you're going to try and capitalize off of a Meteor Beam boost, right? You also have Incineroar creeping back into the metagame. Boom, Meteor Beam scares that as well. Now, This is so strong, and we've seen this in the past, right? Back in the Sun and Moon days and the Ultra Sun and Moon days with the Ultra Beasts, we had the Nihilego, right? And Nihilego would also run the Power Herb. It would get its knockout, but then Nihilego got that added effect of having that Beast Boost, right? So it would have the ability to just kind of steamroll teams. Glimmora, well, yes, it has that ability. It still has the ability to set up the rest of your team. Once again, leveraging the Toxic Debris. And we saw Glimmora and everything kind of fade off with Glimmora because, like I said, the power level got too high. They would kind of ignore Glimmora, and Glimmora really couldn't do anything, right? Glimmora's output, damage output, yes, coming off a base 130 special attack, I hate to say it, but just wasn't high enough because of how you would try to run it and how people were abusing it. But having this more offensive variant now, it's one of those ones where, yeah, I have a base 130 attack. I'm getting to +1. You have to be scared of me now. You absolutely cannot just ignore the Glimmora anymore because it is going to do insane amounts of damage to your team if you start ignoring it. Now, because I can no longer ignore Glimmora, I now have to worry about Toxic Debris again. The Toxic Spikes go up, and once again, Toxic Debris is still incredibly strong, guys. Whether we are breaking Focus Sashes, something like the Shenpao that loves to run Focus Sash, if the Toxic's on the field, the Poison Spikes are on the field before Shenpao switches in, goodbye Focus Sash. It's just not happening, right? Maybe you have Toxic Debris, right? You would run Toxic Debris, I should say, right? Maybe you're breaking Sashes. Maybe because you have Toxic Debris, people are so scared of hitting it that Glimmora goes crazy and just does incredible amounts of damage. Maybe you also force people to play a certain way, and that allows the rest of your team to function really, really well as well, right? Because if I'm going to be leading Glimmora, and the opposing team is pretty much all physical, let's just say, maybe outside of one special attacker, it's probably fairly likely that that special attacker is going to be what they're going to try and leverage to take down Glimmora. And because of that, we can capitalize and say, well, if you're going to lead your special attacker, I can see what your special attacker is going to be, and I can pair Glimmora with something that's going to be able to take that down in a rather quick fashion, right? Or you force them to say, hey, double into this Glimmora, get it off the field because you're scared of Power Herb and your Meteor Beam doing so much damage to your 17 rock weaknesses, because I've seen tons of teams, guys, and I go, that's a rock weakness, that's a rock weakness, that's a rock weakness. There are so many teams right now that just fold to Meteor Beam and can't actually do too much about it, outside of the fact of just trying to remove Glimmora as fast as possible. But if they do that, then you have your Toxic Debris, and then you can put the stall on again if you so choose. Stall, once again, is still not as great as it was early on in the regulations, right? But like I said, the ability to break Sashes, just the threat of having that poison that you can't really afford to take chip, right? Maybe you start taking a little bit of chip, you have big damage dealers in the back, like your own Dragonite, right? All of a sudden, E-Speed, which most people would calc to survive, just barely, right? Like a lot of Ogre Pawns these days are guaranteed to live those Choice Banded Dragonite's extreme speeds, right? Beside the Shenpao. But now all of a sudden it gets poisoned on switch in, then it lives the E-Speed and just dies at the end of the turn anyways, right? So you're swinging calcs into your favor now as well. You can use this very aggressively as well, maybe with Shenpao Sucker Punch. Oh, this would normally miss the KO? Not anymore, right? You have tons of ways to work this Toxic Debris in your favor. So this was always a good ability. This didn't change. But having Meteor Beam forces your opponent to reconsider just ignoring Glimmora, because it can't let the spikes go up, but now you can't ignore Glimmora anyways. And this is very similar kind of to like Corviknights back in the day when they were around. It was Corviknight, yeah, it's going to set up bulk ups. It's not really an immediate threat, but if you ignore it, it's going to become a problem, right? Whereas if you hit the Corviknight, or in this case, you're going to hit the Glimmora, I have 5 other slots on my team that you are now ignoring, that because you're so focused on getting rid of Glimmora before it sweeps you. Or you're ignoring the Glimmora so that you don't set up Toxic Debris before that gets through to you, and you clean up, and the Glimmora cleans the team because they're ignoring Toxic Debris and they don't want that going off, right? It's something that's not talked about a lot when you test Pokemon, and it's something that's really needs to be brought up more, where it's like, okay, yeah, it's a good Mon, it does this, this, and this, but sometimes you also have to consider that the Mon itself, just having the Mon on the field, exerts pressure and makes your opponent think differently about how they're going to approach the game. And I think that allows, and like just that sentence alone really justifies having Meteor Beam, having that Power Herb, having that Toxic Debris. Just all 3 of those together make Glimmora a threat, right? And I haven't even gotten into any potential EVs yet, right? Like I said, obviously 130, you can definitely run this up. If you have something like Tailwind, maybe you go max modest, just put on big pressure, big damage immediately, right? Or what I like a little bit more, and it seems a little bit more consistent right now, is actually max speed timid. I don't know what you do with special attack. I haven't really looked too far into calculations for Glimmora, but right now this is probably a very fair option to just try to send as much damage as you can. You probably could lower this a little bit, but with the one thing I would not do is lower Glimmora's speed, because 151 feels absolutely incredible right now. There are a lot of Pokemon, primarily Urshifu, that we are going to talk about that sit at 149 if they are not speed boosting. Right? If you are not a Jolly Nature Urshifu, the max you hit is 149 and you creep that perfectly. Right? Now, Meteor Beam, of course, is resisted by the Urshifus, right? But if you maybe run an Energy Ball, that hits the Water Ursh. But more importantly, once you get a Meteor Beam up and you are at +1, Sludge Bomb and Earth Power, they are doing so much damage to the likes of something like an Urshifu, or realistically, anything slower than you. Like, this is still a +1 special attack off base 130. It is going to hurt, okay? Once you get your Meteor Beam setup off, you are putting out sheer amounts of damage, and it is absolutely incredible, right? The damage output you have here is unbelievable. Meteor Beam, I believe, at max speed special attack, I'll put the calc on the screen with Flutter Mane, you actually have a chance of just OHKOing not very bulky Flutter Manes, and that's insane to me. The fact that I can just walk in with a Meteor Beam versus a 135 base special attack Pokemon, special defense Pokemon, and just have a chance of just taking it down immediately. Just removing that. Now, obviously, that's not like the key feature, but having that is a nice little added bonus, right? Just the amount of damage you are doing immediately with Glimmora is absolutely insane. And I think that alone justifies it. If you're looking to slap it on a team, me personally, I would start with the max speed timid. I love having 151. This is where I'd go with Glimmora, and it's just that pressure, whether they're hitting into it, putting up the toxic spikes, whether they're ignoring it and letting you get massive Meteor Beams up, massive Sludge Bombs off, and it just has really, really good offensive typing into the metagame right now. Tornadus doesn't like it, Shenpao doesn't like it, Dragonite doesn't like it, Entei doesn't like it, Incin doesn't like it, Ogerpon doesn't like it if you can outpace the Ogerpon. That one's kind of back and forth. Ogerpon doesn't love eating a Sludge Bomb though, especially not on like switching, right? There is so many things that Glimmora can take down in this format right now. I'm very excited to see how Regulation Elf develops, because it already had an amazing showing in Portland leading up to this weekend in like Charlotte and Knoxville. I'm very curious to see how this Pokemon defines the meta, if it starts creeping into the metagame as well, because I think it should. We've seen it start creeping. Is it going to stay? I definitely think it will. But with that, guys, thank you all so much for watching the video. If you guys do enjoy, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help out the channel, and of course, I really do appreciate it. But with that, that's enough rambling for me about Power Herb Glimmora. Thank you all again so much for watching, and I will catch you all in a future video.